Hello and welcome back to Election Time News America. Today is Friday, November 14th, 2025. We're going to be looking at the governorships race in 2026 and who may end up coming out on top. Election Time News are one stop for all things elections and politics, from summations to poll reviews and news. Subscribe below for more content like this about American, Canadian, and Australian elections. Also, to follow the Substack, Threads, Instagram, and X, as well as our website, electiontimene.ws, which the redo is incoming. Link to the description below for more news feeds and our latest predictions. Remember, there's never a dull moment in politics. So, what we do have here is the general page for the general page for the 2026 governorship elections. There's quite a few elections here, and both the Republicans and the Democrats have 18 seats up. So that is, but now we actually had a change from 2024. It was 27-23. Now it is actually 26-24 because Democrats have flipped Virginia. If you can see, that should be on. There we go. You can see here, Youngkin plus 1.9. They flipped that. Other than that, every single other state stayed the same. New Jersey did stay blue. So back to 2022, at this point in time, we had a few interesting combinations here. You still had Edwards leading Louisiana at the time. But other than that, the rest seems really interesting. Bashir in Kentucky, who hadn't won a second time yet, that'd be 2023, where he then won by 5. Youngkin by 1, Cooper by 4.5. Other than that, basically, and then Scott is the only one that doesn't really make any sense. Other than that, the rest of it relatively looks normal. But that is going to be what we're building off of in 2022. This is what the map looks like, 6 to 8 to start things off. And as how it goes, some are not up for re-election. These are the ones that are. A few are retiring, and I'll be going over those in a bit. And so we're looking at, actually, really quick, I'm going to open another version of this, and just so I can quickly, why does it say Republicans over there? Okay, it's just a little confused. So here we're going to have retiring. I actually should do that in red. So re-election, and so then we have undecided is going to be in gray. Right? Retirement, not re-elected, because then we also are going to have retiring is going to be in light red, and then term limited is going to be in that darker red. So to start things off, let's just get the categories over with here. So Kotek is undecided. Newsom is term limited. So that's going to be the first one. Term limited. Newsom. I believe that yet Little's undecided. Lombardo is, in fact, running for re-election. Let's get that right there. Running for re-election. Also running for re-election is Pritzker. Walls. I know Mills is term limited. These two are running. Term limited. Retiring. Term limited. Running. Term limited. I believe term limited. I know she's running. Lombardo's running. Kotek is undecided, right? Green is undecided in Hawaii. Alaska, Dunleavy is term limited. I believe Polis is, yes, term limited. Gordon is term limited. Undecided for Roden. Pillen is running. Kelly is term limited. So just slowly filling in this map here. Running, term limited. I believe term limited there. Evers in Wisconsin is retiring. South Carolina, I believe, is term limited. Yet McMaster in South Carolina. Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro is officially undecided. Whitmer is, yes, term limited. And then we look at McKee is running in Rhode Island. In Massachusetts, Healy is in fact running, and then I believe these two are still undecided. So here is the final map for term limited. It's going to be in dark red. Retiring is that pinkish color where we only have Tony Evers in Wisconsin and Kim Reynolds in Iowa. And then we have running for re-election. We have basically everybody else, unless they're undecided right now, which we have Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Tina Kotek in Oregon, Larry Roden in South Carolina, Phil Scott and Kelly Ayotte in Vermont, New Hampshire, and that is the final map. So, quite an interesting picture here as of right now for who is running for re-election. I'm not going to spend the time making on what term everybody's on, but for example, Walz is going for a third term, and so is Abbott in Texas, second term for quite a few of these candidates. So finally, we're going to be getting to the overall map. So to start things off, for obviously, not every single race is going to be competitive. Some of them are going to be by over 12 points. And it doesn't really matter what candidates there are. Now, there are some exceptions to this, right? Like if you got Doug Jones in Alabama, it might get to about 15 points. You probably still wouldn't even see it be around, 12 under 12 single digits, anything like that, but you could get around 15 points, which would be a huge drop from the 37 that Kay Ivey currently won, the current governor, won by in 2022. It would still be interesting, but not enough to make it not safe. So that's going to be the first one. For the Republicans is going to be in the state of Alabama. Arkansas is also in this column with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, pretty strong approval rating. Oklahoma is just too red to make a difference. Same sort of thing with Wyoming. Brad Little is also running for re-election in Idaho, so there's no real challenge there. You have that same sort of story in South Dakota. Very, very popular governor in Larry Roden, plus 36. Then you also have down in the South, McMaster's term limit doesn't really matter. Same sort of thing with Bill Lee. It doesn't really matter at that point. They're still very Republican states unless something atrocious happens. And you also have very, very Republican, popular Republican governor. I mean, he's literally off the chart here. Only made it go, the colors go to 50, and he's right off the edge at plus 56. He is officially undecided, but if he does run, this is more than a safe state. This is actually going to be the least competitive state in the entire country, which it was in. Actually, no, Wyoming was more, interestingly enough, in 2022. But there was write-ins, so it kind of split the Democratic vote that was there, but it was the second least competitive state in the entire country. So again, he's going to win by a large amount. The question kind of just is exactly how much. And if it's going to be a bluer year, then I'd expect it's probably going to be, quote unquote, only 40 points or so. But yeah, it's still going to be a very big win for him there. Next, we have the safe states for the Democrats. And so, as of right now, California is still in this column. Things have been shaky. It depends on how things end up going. It's only minus 20, which is actually a gain from Newsom. He's not an extremely popular governor. He is at plus 20 right now, which isn't atrocious, but it's nothing great either. And so, again, it's going to come down to how that primary ends up shaking out, which we will absolutely be looking into. Colorado is going to be in this column, I believe. Yeah, Polis is term limited, but I believe that Hickenlooper is the one that's retiring from the Senate to run here. He's pretty well liked in the Senate. He does well, so he's going to be able to hold on to that seat pretty comfortably. I don't think there's really any Republicans out there that are going to be able to easily do anything. I don't know why I didn't include Nebraska. I think my mind's still a bit in Senate mode. That is going to be safe for Pillen, almost certainly more than 12 at this point. Pritzker in Illinois, pretty popular, plus 16. Not great, but he's not doing poorly either. Plus 16, going to do pretty well in the state of Illinois. Walz is probably going to break, maybe not 12. I mean, 2018 he wasn't an incumbent and he almost did. So he's probably honestly going to break 12 points. In 2026 is expected to be a pretty blue year. If you look at the expected national, I don't actually have that set up yet. I need to build this up a bit more so it looks more like the senatorial one. It's gonna happen over a bit of time. I still have that there, but anyway, that's gonna be an interesting race to be watching there. As of right now, New York, because that early polling isn't really giving much. And so I don't find much credibility with it. It's still just a generally blue enough state. Hochul did almost lose to Zeldin in 2022. So that is a huge asterisk. But then again, she was a lot less popular. She is only at plus 15, which still is a bit of a concern. But it is going to be safe blue. But as of right now, I have the projection probably right about plus 14, which still is absurdly low for a state like New York. Safe blue are going to be Maryland and Massachusetts. Those are extremely safe blue states. I don't really think there's much about that. And Hawaii doesn't even matter if green ends up running again. Grisham, I believe, is term limited. Yep, in the state of New Mexico, and that's honestly a good thing for the Democrats there. Depends on how things go. Safe is going to be Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Very, very popular governor. I mean, like I believe, top 8, top 7. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 4. He is tied for 4th, along with Andy Beshear and Larry Roden. So, sorry, 5th. He's tied for 5th. So, he's very, very popular across the entire state, even with Republicans. I think it's like 1 in 5 Republicans approve of Josh Shapiro's job as governor, and over 3 in 5 independents, and 98% of Democrats. So he has absurd numbers there. The only governors that do better than that, split ticket wise, are Andy Beshear and Phil Scott. So again, that's a huge surplus. And while his opponent is a pretty strong candidate in general, I generally don't think it's going to be enough to actually make a big enough difference. We also have Ned Lamont in Connecticut, a blue enough state, will probably easily be able to carry him across the finish line. He won by 13 points in 2022. Should expect to win by a good bit this time. Rhode Island is not. We will get to that in a bit. So those are, and now we do also have Tina Kotek in Oregon. She was struggling in approval rating. She still is, only a plus 8. She's not very popular. She only won by 3.5. But what we've seen in 2025, and we don't have any polls to suggest otherwise, so just basically based on the fundamentals of what I'd expect, it's going to narrowly be 12. Now, it could be closer to maybe 10. But now that I think about it, yeah, I think I'm going to leave it around 10. So I'm going to retract that for now. Okay. Next, we're going to be getting to the likely states. These are going to be those states that are somewhat competitive, might have some interesting candidates, some interesting polls every once in a while that have it look really tight, and then all of a sudden someone's going to pull into the lead again. It's going to be that sort of dynamic here in these states. And so it is 18 to 16. And we're going to start off with the state of Texas. This is with Greg Abbott. He won by 11 points against once potential Democratic star Beto O'Rourke in 2022. He did very well in the Senate in 2018, not so well in 2022, unfortunately, for the Democrats and him there, and his political life basically died after that. But Greg Abbott's relatively well liked at plus 12. I think it'd probably drop a little bit, maybe with how he managed the floods, but I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, that's completely just spitting right there. On complete guesses, but usually, unless a leader does specifically very well after a disaster, their approval rating drops. Like what we saw with Chris Christie in New Jersey, and then Obama came in as well. That helped him, but Chris Christie's approval rating did a gain because it was like instead to be an exemplary response. Meanwhile, you had things like the hurricanes in November, and DeSantis and Kemp's approval rating took a small tank. So it's completely dependent on that. Again, I don't know because we don't have numbers. This is only updated quarterly. The last time it was updated was October 16th. But it still is probably going to be not very close. He might break 12, but considering how far Texas is expected to now shift back to the left with the Hispanic trends, specifically, we're going to be looking at, where is it? There we go. We're going to be looking at, the state of Texas. It is only the Biden-Trump states and Texas have a negative approval rating of Trump. Only the Biden 2020 states, plus Texas, have a negative approval rating of Trump amongst 2024 voters. And Texas voted for Trump by 14. That is a 16-point swing assuming that every single person that voted for Trump approved of him. So that is ridiculous, just to say that right out the bat, right? States that he won by less, Ohio, Florida, they still approve of him narrowly in Ohio, 0.8. It almost might flip, and that is actually bad news. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's the reason why I think it's going to be narrowly under 12. That was a long explanation for the first one, but this one's not going to be as long. Alaska, Dunleavy, I think there's not going to be Walker in the picture. He was an independent, and he lost his seat to Dunleavy, again, also against Bigich in 2018. He originally won in 2014. He ran again in 2022, and he actually did better in the popular vote than in 2018, but whatever. But I think there's probably going to be more coalesced of a field there around multiple candidates. Ranked choice, it's going to probably be relatively close. It might be a little bit closer. Ranked choice is weird. But they don't even calculate ranked choice if he hits 50%. I think he will not on the first ballot. So that means that they'll calculate ranked choice. Now, of course, if they had dropped Pierce, then most of it would have gone to Dunleavy anyway. But that's essentially the picture there. Now we're going to drop in Kotek, probably about 10 points or so. Probably going to be maybe around 9 in Alaska, maybe a little bit more than that. This is Grisham's seat in New Mexico, term limited, probably a bit for the best there, honestly. Wasn't the strongest performer, 6.5 points. I could see it probably closer to about 9. Also going to be likely is going to be Kansas is probably going to be around 8 points or so. This is Kelly's seat. She won twice, somewhat unexpectedly in 2018. This is from the unpopularity of the Brownback administration, and Korback was actually a large part of that. And so, the fact that she ran against him really helped. She won by 5.03%. And then she won re-election in 2022 by 2.25%, right alongside an abortion amendment that passed in Kansas. And so that definitely helped. Potentially, if Roe v. Wade wasn't overturned, Kelly might have not won re-election. But that's going to be the story there. That is going to, unfortunately, the Democrats come to an end, which is going to give the Republicans the first flip of the night, which really isn't what you'd be seeing in an environment like this, but alas, is what we have. And then we go to New Hampshire, not Sununu. They go every 2 years. Ayotte winning, probably going to be by closer to about 7. She's going to lose a bit of resources having to run through that primary, but I think she's going to do okay. It doesn't really matter who she ends up running against. It's going to be a relatively strong fight. Then we have McKee in Rhode Island. He is one of only 2 generally disapproved of governors in the entire country. Now, Braun and Mills are close, right? Braun's only at +3, which is a huge plummet, and if I had to guess, if that trajectory has continued, then he has a net disapproval in Indiana right now. And Maine, Janet Mills has been hovering. She's actually been gaining, though. And Kim Reynolds is the other one. She's retiring along with Tony Evers. We'll get to Wisconsin in a bit, as well as Iowa. There's a big story in Iowa. But McKee is running again with a disapproval rating, which are pretty uncommon for governors. So with that, it's probably going to be under 12. I'm not sure there's really going to be any Republican bench to be able to pick this up. But assuming that there is, a generic Republican might be able to close this race below a 12-point margin. Depends on how strong of an environment there is. And speaking of Janet Mills, the state of Maine. Now, this is with a pretty open seat right now in the Democratic primary, but we do have Angus King III, who is likely to win, as we saw in completely blanking now, in the district down in Arizona. Grijalva won. She now was just sworn in as a congresswoman, and so her father was the one who ran it, and even though there were very strong campaigns with other people, we saw that name recognition matters. So I believe Angus King III is probably going to be the one to be able to win this seat without way too much competition. I mean, you do have Shanna Bellows here and Hannah Pingree, pretty strong candidates. It's not going to be non-contested, but I think Angus King's going to be able to win this, and if he does, he's almost certain to win the governorship. It's probably going to be around 7 points or so in the state of Maine. Now we have the state of Florida to wrap up our likely states here, bringing Republicans to 23. Florida, not a very competitive state anymore. It's going to be a lot more competitive than it was in 2022, with DeSantis annihilating Crist by 19.5 points. He's not extremely approved of, but he's right about in the middle of the pack there, 15 points. Nothing bad at all. But there's no real extremely strong bench here. There's no second coming of DeSantis coming, but they do have Byron Donalds, who's U.S. representative of the 19th Congressional District. He's pretty strong. He's also backed by Trump, so that's going to help him probably easily be able to secure the nomination. The Democrats, used to have no, that was for Senate. They do have David Jolly, which is honestly probably a slightly stronger candidate there. Former U.S. Republican representative for the 13th Congressional District. There seems to be a lot of hype amongst Democratic groups since he was a former Republican, that he might be able to get appeal amongst Republicans, but honestly, I don't think that's really going to end up how it works. And instead, we're probably going to still have a relatively safe race for the Republicans at the end of the night. It's probably going to be called right at poll closing in the Panhandle, if I had to guess. So, those are the likely states. Now we're getting to the competitive ones. These are going to be the ones that are going to be decided by less than 6 percentage points. And so we have 7 races here. These are the ones that we're probably going to be watching. Georgia, Ohio, which is interesting. We haven't watched that one. We didn't watch that one in 2022. 2018 was the last time it was really competitive. Same thing for Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Arizona, and Nevada. Those are going to be the competitive states here. And those are going to be the ones that we're going to be watching. And to start things off, we only really have one true lean state here that I can honestly say will go by a not extremely small margin. That's going to be the state of Ohio. As of right now, there was a poll somewhat recently that did have Amy Acton ahead of Vivek Ramaswamy, but as of right now, it's still just 2 out of a state. And so when we're looking, and if Tim Ryan joins, then that basically just completely destroys any chance for the Democrats to win. Amy Acton appears to be slightly the strongest candidate there. She's currently in office, etc., etc. So she's a very strong candidate. She's already worked on messaging, and if there's a competitive primary, that will only help Ramaswamy, who's already basically gotten the nomination entirely. I mean, everyone else withdrew. And he doesn't even need to campaign against some random insurance agent. No disrespect to Mr. Fundenberg, though. So we can get started on messaging campaign immediately for the general election. He's already started. So if they start running against each other, that's going to be an issue. But here, Hart Research did actually find Amy Acton 1 point ahead, but then one with YouGov found Amy Acton down by 3. Considering how well YouGov did with the 2025 elections, I think that they might be a bit stronger weighted better to follow in years that are a bit more blue-leaning. So I'd say this is probably relatively going to be accurate. 50-47, maybe 50-48, something along those lines. But I do still think that as of right now, Ramaswamy does have the trajectory to win. It's just not going to be by as much, but it is still, interestingly enough, going to be more, maybe a little bit less than DeWine won by in 2018. Next, we are going to the tilt states. Now, this one's going to be, I know that some of these are going to be a bit surprising, and some of you are going to have questions. Go ahead and ask them in the comments. I guarantee I will probably be able to answer any questions that you ask, as long as you don't say XYZ, you're dumb, whatever. But the first one's going to be Nevada, and that's going to be Lombardo. And Lombardo flipped this seat against incumbent Steve Sisolak by 1.5 points. Now, if Sisolak runs again and wins the Democratic primary, then Lombardo is going to win by like 9. But if Aaron Ford, the current Nevada Attorney General, who held on, even as Sisolak lost, wins the nomination, then things are going to be interesting, because he's a pretty strong candidate. If we look at the polling, Lombardo versus Ford's 40-37, 23% undecided. That was in October, but still, that's not that weak of a lead. And I don't know what on earth is going on here, but that was in 2023, so that doesn't really count. But Lombardo, pretty strong candidate, and so that's going to be interesting to see there. Probably going to be not as contested as you might think for the Democrats. They're going to be focusing more on holding these races and potentially flipping, especially Georgia, considering it's left trending. Though, if you honestly think about it, if you invest in it, you might actually want to hold off on Georgia and go for a state that's right trending like Iowa, and then push for Georgia when it is continuing to left trend in a year like 2030, even though you might then have to assume that the Democrats might win in 2020, which means it's a red wave. But anyway, it's complicated. The strategists at the DNC are going to be having a ball about this cycle. I bet they already have a whole plan written out. But anyway, now we have some tilt Democrat seats starting in the state of Michigan. This one's going to be pretty close. Term limited for Whitmer. Wow, I'm blanking on names. Jocelyn Benson is probably the strongest candidate here. Gilchrist isn't far behind. It's going to be a relatively competitive primary. Pete Buttigieg decided not to run. But either of these two are going to be pretty strong candidates. The Republican primary, you have John James, very strong candidate. If he ends up losing, that would be a huge blunder. And so, but then you go to polling, pure toss-up. John James actually ahead by 5. This is a Republican poll, though. This is a Democratic one, only has her ahead, Jocelyn Benson ahead by 1. And if we go to the other one with John James, Gilchrist apparently is actually the weaker candidate. But Jocelyn Benson down by 5, doubtful. But here only up by 1, and Mike Duggan's getting whopping 26%. He is actually very popular mayor of... That's actually a beautiful picture. Wow, look at that. Very popular mayor of Detroit, so he's actually able to get a lot of votes, but turns out that he's actually been pulling a lot of votes evenly from across the aisle. So right now, we're just going to go smack dab and say, due to the partisan lean of Michigan and the national environment, tilt D. We're going to do the same, essentially, for Wisconsin. A bit unclear on what's happening. Tony Evers is retiring. But now we do have the lieutenant governor, Sarah Rodriguez, essentially going to probably be the candidate there. Mandela Barnes expressed interest, but is not likely to actually jump into the race at this point now. And they have Tom Tiffany, the 7th Congressional District candidate there. He's okay. Polling, nothing really yet. I mean, they don't really have anything yet. Interestingly, generic Republican did actually beat generic Democrat. But I really don't think that there's really no polling yet. So we're just going to have to go on the fact that we have the current lieutenant governor. And it's going to be a blue year. This is probably going to be closer to about 2 points. This is going to be closer to about, like, literally half a point. Like, it's literally basically neck and neck. Tilt Republican in the state of Iowa. Tilt Republican. Yes, you heard that right. After Reynolds won by 18.5 in 2022. This is because we have the only Democrat who has won statewide in the 212th 203rd decade. So one of those in the 2020s in Iowa. Rob Sand, the auditor of state, and he won it by a few hundred votes. Versus, though, you do have Randy Feenstra in there, who's going to be the representative from the 4th Congressional District. Pretty strong candidate there as far as Feenstra goes. But Rob Sand is going to be a formidable candidate. I mean, literally formidable. I mean, Race to the White House is a pure toss-up. Salvador Cristobal Ball, lean. Cook Political Report, lean. Rob Sand is beating Feenstra. Now, this is a Democratic pollster, but it's going to be a blue year. So they might not be that inaccurate this cycle. They might be... Their slight oversampling and overfavoring of Democrats might actually make them more accurate, just like Republican pollsters, like Trafalgar and Rasmussen in Republican years, like what we saw in 2024. But they were pretty darn off in years like 2018, for example. They were very, very far off. So that's within the margin of error. But still, he's ahead. A Democrat's ahead in the polling in Iowa, but it is just 2 red. As of right now, it is going to be tilt R. Then we go down to Georgia, another tilt R. There's just no real bench down here established yet. I mean, the only candidate they have is Keisha Lance Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta. She's not extremely popular or anything. Jeff Duncan might be okay. Not entirely sure about how strong that goes. But Republicans do have Burt Jones and Chris Carr facing off against each other, the Attorney General versus Lieutenant Governor. So that's going to be interesting to see there, how that ends up going. But toss-up, tilt R, lean R. We do have it tilt R. We're not going to leave any toss-ups here. And then to finish it off, we have tilt D in Arizona, meaning that we only have 1 flip in Kansas, unfortunately. But this map will almost certainly shape up differently. There were no flips in 2024. 1 in 2023, but the last time that we had this full field, there were 4 flips. The last time then, there were 8. The time before that, there were 6. So it continues to be relatively a high number of flips across the map continually, so that's going to stay that low. But we do have tilt D in the state of Arizona. And Katie Hobbs is actually pretty popular, plus 19. She's running again, and so that's gonna be just pretty clear there. Andy Biggs, not a very popular guy necessarily. David Schweikert, not the best candidate either. Karen Taylor Robson, nothing insane either. Andy Biggs is leading. I think he's honestly going to be slightly the weakest candidate, so he's the one winning. Arizona Republicans tend to shoot themselves in the foot with candidates. You could see that again, especially in like the Senate and the gubernatorial race here. Lake, 3/4 of a point in 2022. Lake was and proved to be a very poor candidate in 2024 when she lost by 2.5 to Gallego on the same ballot that Trump won the state by 5.5. So again, very poor candidate, but also does show that Hobbs is actually a pretty poor candidate as well. She might be able to do better this year. It's going to be a blue environment. That's essentially why it's going to be tilt blue, which means 27-23. Republicans have gained one, making it the exact same balance as after 2024. Very few flips going on here, but that is the picture for 2026. So then you end up having, there's 9 safe Democrat seats, 4 likely, 3 tilt. And then you have 10 safe Republican seats, 5 likely, 1 lean, 3 tilts. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already. And let me know of any ideas, opinions, etc. in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. And we are nearing on 500 subscribers. Thank you all so much. It means a lot. So thank you all again and have a fantastic rest of your day.